Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Streamline Capital. Happy to have today's guest with us. We have Alex Kingman. And Alex, I know this is not your first time on this show, so instead of welcome back.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Brian, and it's great to be back and reconnect with you and have this chat.
Awesome. Awesome. So how have you been?
I've been great. We've been just rocking and rolling with our acquisition side, just building out
Mhm.
that funnel to find more deals and just focused, really focused on building out our acquisition. So that's been
Awesome.
fun.
All right. Well, let's turn back the clock a little bit and let's just talk about, your background. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got into real estate in general and then multifamily.
Sure. So we started out in multifamily about 7 or 8 years ago in 2018. I'm sorry, not multifamily, just real estate in general, actually. And before that, even, it was something that I always had wanted to get into since I was in middle school, actually. I ended up reading this book kind of because it was the last book on the shelf that I hadn't read yet
Mhm.
by Robert Kiyosaki. And so in eighth grade, we were going on a long drive with my family for spring break, and
Mhm.
I just picked it
Yep.
up, and it totally changed my whole perspective on work and
Yeah.
life and how I'm going to do my future. So from that point on, I knew I wanted to be an investor and business owner and
Yeah.
go that route instead of a W-2 employee.
B&I quadrants. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So all of that was in there, and it was
Mhm.
a huge mind shift. And it was definitely something that changed the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the foundation that got
Uh-huh.
us on the path of getting into real estate. We started pretty young. I think we were 20 when we bought the first property.
Yeah. Now you're saying we. I know who we is, but
Oh, right.
tell the listeners who we is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would be my partner in business and in life. His name's Brody Garcia, and he is a licensed general contractor and also a licensed electrician and has his
Mhm.
own contracting remodeling company here locally in the California Bay Area, San Francisco. And yeah, he's been doing well with that, but that kind of also tied into our real estate company because we have always mainly focused on properties that need a lot of work, that are in a lot of physical distress. And now we also do we look at properties that need other types of distress as well, or have other types of distress as well.
Mhm.
But our bread and butter has been physical distress because it's definitely our background.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, physical distress might be the easiest one to fix, A work crew, throw a little bit of money at it, there are other types of distress, it's a different skill set, it's not one that I
Yeah.
really have right now, but well, awesome, awesome, awesome. So tell us how real estate progression went. You said you were 20-ish when you bought your first. How did your portfolio grow from there?
Yeah, we started with a house hack because we wanted to buy a property, but I wasn't about to buy anything unless it was an investment. So we agreed to buy an investment property and live in one side, rent out the other. And we actually lived in one side while we remodeled it into a larger unit. So it
Mhm.
was definitely, we did everything ourselves. It was definitely a
Yep.
bit of a learning curve. So from there, we found out, after that we really liked it, but we've felt that California wasn't exactly the best landlord friendly, investor friendly place to be investing. So we, at the time, were interested in a lot more cash flowing types of properties and things like that. So we went and actually started investing out of state into 1 to 4 unit properties elsewhere,
Mhm.
starting with Jacksonville, Florida. We did a lot
Mhm.
of research, found that to be a really good spot at the time, and bought a distressed fourplex there. And from there, we continued to do that in Florida and also in Indiana, and built out, a bit of a portfolio of properties in those areas,
Nice.
and eventually moved into multifamily, which is now what
Yeah.
we focus on mainly.
Okay, so how about this question? What was the biggest driver for you guys getting into the larger multifamily?
Mainly just economy of scale from a management standpoint and also from a, I guess, investor standpoint. We could have more investors on one property rather than have an investor here with this property, an investor there with that property. So it made sense to have everything under one roof, and all maintenance and all issues are just in the same location and same property. We can have one property manager for all, a maintenance person for all, and overall the expenses are lower. That was the real driver for that.
Mhm. Now, that's what a lot of people advertise. Have you found that to actually be true?
In some ways, yes.
Mhm.
In
Yeah.
some ways, yes. So expense wise, like on the properties and everything, I think lately anyone in multifamily knows that expenses have gone up quite a bit for commercial
Mhm.
multifamily properties. So in terms of maintenance and repairs, it's probably pretty
Mhm.
similar
Yeah.
to, still being probably better on an economy of scale standpoint, but taxes, insurance, all those things, if, that might
They
be
hit
a
you
little
hard no
higher
matter
now.
what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
No,
sometimes
yeah.
single families and 1 to 4 unit properties have they have better returns actually sometimes that we see, but not always, it just
Mhm.
depends on the area and where it is. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it still stands true, but it
Mhm.
depends.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's really hard comparing, all large multifamily, all small multifamily, but yeah, in general, the economies of scale exist, and as a general partner, the amount of money you make scales with the property size too, which is one thing that, I found over and over again. I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but I wish I never would have bought small properties, but
Mhm.
the truth is it took me buying small properties to, catch the fever, so to speak, and then get into larger and larger and larger properties. So,
Yeah,
but
I'm right there with you on that one. That's exactly how we got there too.
yeah, yep. So, well, cool. So let's talk about some of the challenges. I mean, just kind of set the stage for you, when you decided to get into that first large multifamily,
Mhm.
whatever you determine large is, what were some of the challenges that were different, that you guys faced?
Yeah, actually, this is a great question. I'm actually in a group. I have I guess, business coach, real estate coach, and there are other people in the group. And one of them is just at this exact stage where he's transitioning from small multis and trying to buy a larger multifamily property. And it really reminded me of everything that was a challenge in the very beginning. So for us, one main challenge was learning how to raise capital in more of a
Mhm.
bulk style than just going and talking to the people that we already knew that were maybe friends and family, like, hey, you want to come in on this one little deal, bring 20K. Now it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, now we're bringing 500,000. It's a different story.
yeah,
So that was definitely challenging. I think the first deal is definitely the hardest for new people who want to get into multifamily syndications and this type of real estate and using a
yeah,
syndication
yeah.
because you don't have a track record in multifamily. So it's extremely challenging to sometimes to find that capital if the people don't have the capital or don't want to, invest with somebody that's brand new. Perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, it is perfectly reasonable. I mean, wherever you're starting, you bring your network with you, and
Mhm.
some people don't have networks with deep pockets, right? And I know I certainly didn't starting out. But so on the first deal you guys did, were you guys like the lead sponsor? Did you guys do everything, or were you part of a big partnership? How was that structured, and then how did that end up working out for you?
Yeah. So actually, our first deal, we were not the lead GPs on
Mhm.
that deal. We were a co-GP. And true to the word co-GP, like we're extremely involved in this deal. As you know, I know a lot of new people probably sometimes they get into deals where they don't really realize what's supposed to be and what's
Ah,
not. So we've been very, very involved, and it's actually I've really enjoyed that deal. But we actually met on one of your TGIF
yeah.
meeting calls on.
Friday calls, yes,
Mhm.
yes, and those are still going on. I think,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, I think the amount of attendance on those calls has kind of reflected the general sentiment on multifamily. Because a year ago, it was like 4 people every week, and, we're starting to get some of the old timers back. But yeah, well, that's awesome. Glad you guys were able
Yeah.
to link up there, and that's part of the reason why I have that meetup.
Yeah, it was great. And it really getting into multifamily was a lot for us. A lot of it was like, okay, we want to do this. Now what? And actually,
Mhm.
one of the first things we did was join your group. I can't remember how we found it or who recommended it to us,
Yeah.
but we joined your group and talked to all these people that were doing, a couple thousand unit or had a couple thousand units under management or a couple hundred. And at the time we were like, wow, and
Yeah.
and now I guess we can say we're one of those as a co-GP, we don't have everything fully owned by ourselves. But it all starts somewhere. And so then, just met the right people and we, I guess, vibed well with them and continued to kind of stay in touch and ended up, saying, hey, if you have any deals, let us take a look. Let us work with you on it. If you need some additional help, we've got the construction background. This is what we can bring to the table, how we can provide value. We have, we can help bring some capital as well. And let's do a deal. So that's pretty much what happened. We just went for
Awesome.
it and yeah, and now we're doing it.
Yeah, looking back, I was a little bit stubborn and maybe naive. I wanted to be the man when I did my first deal. And so, everybody told me, hey, it's a good idea to partner with somebody with more experience. I'm like, no, we're just going to do this. We're just going to do this. But, I thought about it a lot recently. How would I do things differently if I were to start over again? And the answer is co-GP. I would have done a co-GP a couple of times. And then if I decided I wanted to be like the lead sponsor, that's what I would have done. But yeah, I have still co-GP'd a couple of times. And, I will tell you, there's some people that it's very well suited for. And there's some people pointing at myself that that's not well suited for. Right. So,
I know what you
yeah.
mean.
Yeah, yeah. So there is definite a type of person that would rather be a co-GP and a type of person that would rather be the lead sponsor. And sometimes it takes doing a little bit of both to figure out which one you like best.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I mean, I think that we've gotten to the point now where we've partnered enough to know that we want to have full control of our deals. Luckily, our partners on the first deal that we did are wonderful and we work very well together and the communication is good. I mean, I think co-GPing, like you said, is a great way to go when you're getting started because there's so much you just don't know that you don't know that I think it's just more of a risk to not partner as long as, the caveat here, as long as they're a good GP to partner with.
Yeah, I mean, there's one time that I truly co-GP'd with somebody, and this is the only property that I've ever been on where I didn't sign on the loan and I didn't really have a lot of say in how things were managed. And that's also the property that made me start thinking, gosh, I don't ever want to do this again. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, but I think the sponsors were fine. They didn't communicate well, and
Mm,
eventually, sad story. Eventually, they lost the property. And that's
yeah.
still to date my only loss. But co-GP, I like what you said. When you start out, you don't know what you don't know. And us starting out, trying to do everything for ourselves, getting the property under contract, the due diligence, the management, the capex, all that other stuff. Everything was brand new to us. Everything was brand new to us. And with that co-GP, you can kind of get used to smaller piece of the pie before taking on the big piece or the whole pie. But
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like training wheels.
yeah, yeah, I like that one too. So, well, cool. So, what does your portfolio look like now? Where are you in? Are you still just Indiana and Florida, or have you expanded? What else do you guys have?
Yeah, so I mean now currently we have I think just 80 units at the moment. We had around 253
Mhm.
units. That's been the most that we've had. But at this time we just have about 80 units looking for our next deal as well. We've been primarily looking in Texas and Oklahoma, a bit in Florida, but it
Okay.
just numbers there just don't seem to work as well. But
Mhm.
we've already got our team there as well. So we
Yeah.
look there. But yeah, we've mainly just focused on mainly those states. Sometimes things
Mhm.
pop up in northern Indiana, but we mainly
Yeah.
look in Oklahoma and Texas right now. Most of the major metros, mostly inland from the coast. But yeah, it's been good. We've been slowly growing. And then locally, we do some flips sometimes, but that's kind of
Mhm.
on the side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, we're talking about this before we hit the record button, but yeah, price of real estate where you live, I could probably do 4 flips for the, price of one there.
Yeah,
Maybe
probably.
not four,
Maybe close.
two.
Yeah, it depends on
Yeah,
where you're at. Yeah,
two
but
to one. Salt Lake
yeah,
City, I mean, you said you purchased
yeah,
the flip for about 1 million. I could probably buy a house to flip here for about 500K. So,
Okay. Yeah.
which incidentally is why a lot of people from the Bay Area are moving to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. A lot of people moved away, especially during COVID. Everyone was like, I'm out of here. I can work
Yeah.
anywhere and not pay taxes.
Yeah, and they're selling a house with $1 million in equity, and they show up in
Mhm.
our backyard, and I mean, I'm not offended by it. There are people here who are
Yeah, there are
offended by
definitely
it.
people who are offended by it.
But yeah, I mean, they show up here with, just a boatload of cash, and it's just like, oh, $500,000, and I get a house twice the size as the one I had in
Oh
the Bay
yeah.
Area. Awesome.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's definitely it's helped real estate prices here as well. And one thing we're seeing here in Salt Lake City, there's a big tech scene here. We're getting a lot of people from Silicon Valley. They're
Hmm.
tech scene in Silicon Valley, and they're doing the same thing, selling a house with $1 million in equity and, plopping down here and doing really well for themselves. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that at around COVID time,
mhm,
a lot of people when they moved, it seems that now tech, and maybe it's just that it's more on my radar now, but tech
yeah,
is seeming to almost like spread out from just being like just the Silicon Valley and these other few places to a lot of other cities all around the US. So I think it's pretty cool, and we're going to see some really good things from
yeah.
economies locally for
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah, Austin. I know Austin has a good tech scene, and I'm obviously a big Utah fan, so I pay attention to what happens here. But a Stanford report, Bay Area school, put a report out a couple of years ago, and they were talking about tech startups. And they said, for people listening, a unicorn with a startup is a company that gets $1 billion valuation. They said that the place that a startup is most likely to become a unicorn is Salt Lake City, and the chances of Salt Lake City over Silicon Valley were almost 2 to 1.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So, but yeah, I mean, tech, yeah, Silicon Valley used to be where most of the big tech was.
Right.
And I think a lot of that big tech, for similar reasons, moved to other states. I know second headquarters of a lot of these places have opened up in other cities too. But anyway, yeah, so we're glad prices got really, really high in California in a way. But
Yeah. It works out.
yeah, works for us. Works for
Yeah.
us. But yeah, so cool. So looking today forward, what are you guys looking to do in this coming year and after that?
Yeah, so I mean, mainly we're working on building out a stronger deal flow pipeline because we get deals now, but really we have more investors than deals. So, and we want to focus on leading deals now that we have the experience to do that.
Mhm.
And that way we can control everything about the deals, which is important to us. So, our main goal this year is to build that out a lot stronger, do more deals. Other than that, I mean, I've been focused on building out our newsletter for investors and making sure that all the information on there is helpful to them in a way that they can learn enough to be able to understand investing passively and really know what a good sponsor is to work with versus not, because
Mhm.
a lot of people, I think, in the last few years have started to realize that there is a big difference between the two. So, yeah, I mean, I guess those are the two things that I've been focused on is just our investors and our deal flow. That's the goal. Just keep on going and get some new multifamily properties under our belts. And
I mean, really, what else is there?
yeah,
Investment and
just
deal
gotta stay
flow.
focused on those two things.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta operate, of course, but if
Yeah,
you
yeah. And that
investors
has
deal
been
flow,
important
but
as
yeah.
well. I guess I
Yeah.
should say that, especially the last few years.
Mhm.
If you can't operate a deal well, even if you can, sometimes there are just too many factors that can come into play. But especially if you're strong on the operations side, your properties can weather pretty much any storm. So that's been
Yeah.
important as well.
I just sat down with the owner of the property management company. They're based here locally, but they manage like over 30,000 doors nationwide. But when you talk about operations, there's some key partners that you need to be able to operate. And my goal is to keep a really, really strong relationship with certain key partners and
Mhm.
with property management companies. And I told this to I've told this guy the same thing several times. I have a love-hate relationship with property management.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I love them because they do the job that I don't want to, but sometimes I hate them because they make mistakes, and who doesn't? But Problem is when the property management makes mistakes, it, affects your bottom line and whatnot.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So
Definitely.
operating, raising more money. And I will say you're probably the only person that's come on my podcast in 6 months that says you have more money than deals. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if it's just people in this particular area because a lot of people I know are like that are local to me are,
Mhm.
maybe just sitting on some cash. It just is a different story than some other places in the country. There's also, a lot of I've built a lot of relationships with some fund managers and
Mhm.
people that are always looking to place capital, so that's also been helpful. Yeah, just trying to kind of focus on relationships where people have money they want to place.
Yeah. I heard this from somebody who I think he still lives in the Silicon Valley, but when he started out, he wanted to be the operator. He wanted to be guy in charge, and he got into a coaching program. And his coach looked at him and said, "You live in a money state. You probably should learn how to raise money." And since I mean he's raised I don't know how many millions, but it's a large number
Oh
of
yeah.
millions, right? But yeah, it is one of those places where a lot of people have money, and if you're fortunate to live in a place like that, capital raising is a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely can be.
So, yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, how about this? I would say this is probably most important question of the entire podcast, so don't screw it up. All right, here it
Okay,
comes.
ready.
If you had to give advice to somebody who's just starting out, what would that advice be?
If you're just starting out, actually, some of what we covered today is probably pretty good advice. Starting in multifamily, there's a lot of new things to learn. Finding a mentor and or a lead GP that's doing really well is extremely good with communication and organized, someone who's clearly honest and you can understand that. So basically just vet whoever you're going to work with, but find a mentor or a lead partner that you can be really involved in the deal with them and learn from them. Let them be your model for how to do it, and you get
Yeah.
involved with everything you can possibly do. They're going to make sure you're not going to fail because they're not going to let the deal fail. So if you're just starting out, I think, I mean, that's kind of how we did it. So I can attest to that myself, and I think
Yeah.
that's a really good way to get started.
Yeah, I started out in getting a mentorship, a mentor in one of those mentorship programs, and it was enabling, is what it was. I mean, it was one of these things where it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. I had a burning fire, and that just really helped me, get to the next step. So 100%. And then on partnering, like I said, I wish I would have partnered with somebody, my first couple. Instead, I found three partners and we were all brand new to the game. Now, looking back, we did well, but part of that was timing. Yeah, anyway, 100% agree. I think mentorship is absolutely crucial. And then if that mentor can be your partner on your first deal at the same time, I think you're double dipping. But anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. If you look at babies, for example, I have a 1.5-year-old now. Actually, the last time I came on this podcast, I was pregnant with this
It's
baby.
been
So
that long. Yeah.
yeah, so she's 1.5 now, but she learns through modeling, through what I model for her, what her dad models for her. I mean, that's how we learn is we watch, we
Mhm.
try it ourselves, we fail, we try again. That model corrects us. That person says, nope, oh, do it like this, not like that. Oh, okay. And you get that feedback right away. So that's one of the reasons I really like that model
So,
for,
yeah, great example, close to home too. But yeah,
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, what flashed through my head is like all my kids, putting on my hats and my boots, and
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I was military for quite a while. I think
Yeah.
every single one of my kids at one point, had my, the combat helmet on, or put my boots on, or
Hmm.
one of my uniforms. But yeah, that's exactly what happens. I think it's a good analogy for mentors. It's almost you want somebody who's like a parent, patient and wants the best for you. So,
Yeah.
all right. So last question, how can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn at Alex Kingman and Instagram as well, same username. Our website has a lot of information for
Mhm.
passive investors if they're curious to look into this type of investing. Our website's investwithkgi.com. So those are all good places to reach out to me. I'll respond. You can send me a message on LinkedIn, or there's a little form on the website, or message me on Instagram. Any of those are fine. Happy to help in any way I can.
And KGI, is that Kingman Garcia?
Yep, Kingman Garcia Investments. It was really
Yeah.
creative.
Really, really creative, really
Yeah.
creative. If you know her partner, Brody, that's his last name too.
Yeah.
I had never really even thought about that. I knew your company was KGI, but it was just like when you said that, I'm like, wait, Brody's last name starts with a G. How about that? But
Hmm.
I wonder if that was
Yeah,
on purpose, but looks like it was. But
it
what's
was, yeah.
yeah, what does the I stand for? Incorporated
Investments.
Investments. All
Yeah.
right, that's even better, even better. All right. So, well, hey, Alex, thanks for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I appreciate coming back on and getting to chat for a little bit.